Chapter 5 Proto-Indo-Iranian and Early Vedic Religion, covering the years from about 1500 to 800 BCE. Written and produced by Thomas Tyseal. Copyright Thomas Tyseal, unless otherwise noted. A long time ago, the people we now call Iranians and Indo Aryans, that is, Aryan settlers in northern India, were one people, Proto-Indo-Iranians, and lived north of the Caspian and Aral seas on vast grasslands where they grazed cattle. Two major religions are descended from these people, Hinduism and Zoroastrianism. Both absorbed native influences in the lands into which they wandered or captured. We'll examine the transition to Hinduism, what Hindus called Sanatana Dharma, eternal truth or law, first, then look at the foundations of Zoroastrianism in the next chapter. The Proto-Indo-Iranians were pastoralists, living on the vast Russian plains. As they built no temples, left no paintings or carvings, and had no writing, it's hard to know much about their beliefs. They appear to have had three ethically minded gods. There was Ahura, which means Lord, Mazda, Lord of wisdom, Ahura Varuna, Lord of the laws of nature, moral order, and the movement of skies and waters. By the way, the root word VR in Varuna refers to what surrounds us, the sky and water. As controller of movement within sky and water, Varuna was thus Lord of cosmic order, or Rita. And thirdly, Ahura Mitra, Lord of oaths. The word Mitra means to bind in the Indo-Iranian language. In addition, as with ancient Chinese, Sumerians, and all ancient cultures, the Proto-Indo-Iranians had many nature gods. There was Apis, the goddess of water, Atar, the fire god, Asman, the sky god, Zam, the earth goddess, Havar, the sun god, Ma, the moon god. They also had a minor god of war, Indra, who later became important as a group of Proto-Indo-Iranians moved into India, becoming Indo Aryans. The Proto-Indo-Iranians had an interesting creation story. Creation was made up of 7 elements above and below a cosmic mountain, Mount Hara. There was a stone vault which set the upper limit of the sky, the earth, which was divided into 7 regions, Karshvars, 6 surrounding a central 7th region. At the end of time, they believed, all 7 would be united. Water, which sat on top of the earth, a single plant, a tree of many seeds, which was the ancestor of all plants, provided a sacred drink, hauma, which later became important in Vedic religion. Fire, both the visible type and the invisible type, the latter of which provided the heat within living things, and a primordial righteous and just man from whom people are descended, and finally a bull from which all animals are descended. The story goes that the gods crushed the man, the bull, and the plant, and from these sacrifices all people, animals, and plants were descended. These 7 elements were represented in rituals, yasna, performed by priests, which provided protection to the community. No single creator is mentioned in their myths, only gods. These Proto-Indo-Iranians came to believe in an afterlife. Only good souls could reach paradise, which was called the House of Song. What a great and comforting concept. Offerings of food and clothing were made to the dead to use in the afterlife. Thus, like the ancient Chinese, ancestors were important to honor. Around 1800 BCE, perhaps a few hundred years after Yu the Great supposedly reigned in China, and about the time Abraham trekked through Mesopotamia, groups of Indo Iranians began their trek into northwestern India, taking their gods and war chariots with them. Indo Iranians called themselves Aryans. The group that moved into northwestern India and the Indus River Valley is now called Indo Aryan. This migration lasted hundreds of years. The Indus Valley, into which Aryans moved beginning around 1800 BCE, contained two large cities in decline and largely abandoned, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. The remains of both still exist. Portions of Mohenjo-daro is shown at left. Scholars believe that the ancient religion that Aryans encountered as they moved into the vast Indus Valley was based on phallic worship of the mother goddess, who is exemplified in the statue shown at left from Mohenjo-daro. As Joseph Campbell noted in his volume on Oriental mythology, evidence supports that this mother goddess had to be appeased and made fertile by occasional human sacrifice. He further notes that cultural and archaeologic evidence support that traces of this ancient religion have survived in the form that Hindus worship as Kali, as shown at right. The name Kali combines elements of the Sanskrit words for both time and the color black. Thus she is the goddess of the power of Mother Earth to overcome all, especially evil, through the passage of time and subsequent death and destruction. Kali is also a symbol of power, Shakti, especially for females. Kali's consort is Shiva, as shown at right. Shiva is often portrayed with a trident, a bull, or phallic objects called lingams. Images of a god sitting in a yoga position, featuring a trident headdress and surrounded by animals, including a bull, have been found in the ancient Indus Valley, thus suggesting that Shiva worship predates the Vedic religion brought by Aryans into the Indus Valley. Around 1500 BCE, Indo-Aryans began to put together scripture called the Vedas, meaning knowledge. There are 4 sets of Vedas: the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. Note that the Rig Veda is the largest. Here again are the names of the 4 Vedas on the left. Each Veda has 4 sections, as shown here. The word Samhitas means a collection of writings. These are the oldest and the main part of each Veda, which contains hymns, mantras, and prayers to various deities. The Brahmanas provide details about sacrificial rites, rules of conduct, and commentaries on some of the Samhitas. The Aryankas are supplements and later correctives to Brahmanas, and often de-emphasize rituals. The word Upanishad means sitting with devotion near a spiritual teacher. These are now considered the most mystical and essential teachings of the Vedas. The Upanishads are at the end of each Veda and are sometimes called Vedanta, which means conclusion. As to the Rig Veda, it is the oldest and most sacred. It was composed between 1500 to 1000 BCE, corresponding roughly to the period of the Shang dynasty in China, when ancestor worship and oracle bones were still major components of religious belief, and roughly paralleling the stretch of time from Moses, or just before Moses, till the time of King David. The Rig Veda has a little over 10,000 verses spread across 1,000 chapters, which are divided into 10 books. It's thousands of pages in length. Books 1 and 10 are newer than the others and were composed close to the year 1000 BCE. Elaborate techniques were used to facilitate oral transmission of the Vedas. Estimates vary from 1500 to 500 BCE as to when the Rig Veda was first written down, probably on bamboo leaves. The other Vedas were assembled after the Rig Veda. The Sama Veda consists mostly of songs and chants. The Yashur Veda is mostly focused on ritual and has two parts, the black and white Yajur Veda. The Atharva Veda is also focused mostly on ritual. One of the earliest gods mentioned in the Rig Veda is Aditi. While Aditi cannot be directly traced to the Proto-Indo-Iranian roots, scholars believe that she is descended from this culture. The Rig Veda explains, Aditi is heaven, Aditi is the firmament, Aditi is mother, father, and son, Aditi is all the gods, Aditi is the 5 classes of people, Aditi is generative ration and birth, all that has been or will be born. As goddess of the sky, Aditi is important as she is the source of all celestial bodies and thus the mother of the gods. She is described as free-spirited and unbound like the sky, and is married to the sage Kasyapa. They are said to have had 33 children who are devas, that is, divine gods or celestial beings, one of which was Indra. 12 of her children, but not Indra, are solar deities called Adityas. The Rig Veda explains that these 12 behold the innermost thoughts of men, whether wicked or virtuous, whether far from or nigh to those royal deities. They are, the verses say, the upholders of all things, movable or immovable, the protectors of the universe. Mitra, Varuna, Savita, the sun, and in some counts Vishnu, are all Aditas. Recall from our earlier discussion of Proto-Indo-Iranian gods that Varuna was the lord of the laws of nature. While he made it into the Vedas as the son of Aditi, his mention is scant. Only 10 hymns are associated with Varuna in the Rig Veda. Nevertheless, Varuna is still considered the high god controlling the laws of nature, which establish cosmic order, which is called the Rita, and the movement of skies and waters. Varuna proclaims, Lordship certainly belongs to me. I, the eternal sovereign, is all the immortals acknowledged. I make the dripping waters rise. By Rita, I uphold the sky. By Rita, I am the one who rules in accordance with Rita. Mazda, the Proto-Indo-Iranian god of wisdom, is not mentioned at all in the Rig Veda, though he may appear under the vague term Ashura, which just means powerful being. Mitra, the god of oaths, is mentioned 38 times, but when he is, he's under the shadow of Varuna. Recall that Mitra and Varuna are 2 of the 12 sun god children, Adityas, of Aditi, the sky goddess. The Rig Veda speaks of Mitra Varuna as twin guardians of truth and order. Varuna is the more powerful god of celestial order, Mitra of human order. The Vedas only speak of Mitra alone once. Mitra, when praised, animates men to exertion. Indra sustains both the earth and heaven. Mitra looks upon men with unclosing eyes. Offer to Mitra the oblations of clarified butter. Over time, Mitra became associated with daylight, as that's when people make oaths, while Varuna became the powerful evening god who watches us through 1,000 stars. Mitra, however, waned in importance and for a while simply became the patron divinity of friendship. In later times in Persia, and eventually Rome, Mitra experienced a significant revival, which we'll discuss when we discuss Roman religion. In the 5th book and 85th chapter of the Rig Veda, we learn that Varuna put Soma on the mountain. Soma is derived from the Proto-Indo-Iranian word Salma. The Iranian cognate is Hauma. These refer to an extract made from an unidentified plant, apparently from the above Rig Veda reference, grown on a mountain, that was used in religious ceremonies to gain inspiration, happiness, and strength. We learn in Book 8, Chapter 48 of the Rig Veda that if we drink Soma, we may become immortal. Soma was also personified as a god resident on the moon. Thus, Chinese and early Hindus were both occupied with methods to attain immortality. The figure here shows Soma being ingested for religious purposes. Indra, the god of war, thunder, and rain, is the main god of the Rig Veda. Indra is a more appropriate god for a conquering people on the move. He is mentioned in 250 verses of the Rig Veda and is often depicted in art as riding elephants and killing the serpent god Vritra, who held back the waters needed to nourish the land. As god of rain, Indra was also the god of fresh water, much like Baal in Canaan. The sacrificial fire of the Proto-Indo-Iranians made it into the Vedas, where it became personified as Agni, god of sacrificial fire. Agni is often shown with two heads, one for the domestic hearth and one for the public sacrificial fire. Agni, god of fire, is mentioned 200 times in the Rig Veda. As a hearth god, he is the fire within us. As a sacrificial fire god, he summons other gods. Book 12 of the Rig Veda reads, "We choose Agni, the messenger, the herald, master of all wealth, well skilled in this our sacrifice. With callings ever they invoke Agni, Agni, lord of the house, oblation bearer, much beloved. Bring the gods hither, Agni, born for him who strews the sacred grass. Thou art our herald, meet for praise. Wake up the willing gods, since thou, Agni, performest embassage. Sit on the sacred grass with gods. O Agni, radiant one, to whom the holy oil is poured, burn up our enemies, whom fiends protect." One of the creation stories of the ancient Proto-Indo-Iranians also made it into the Vedas. Proto-Indo-Iranians believed that people were made from the sacrifice of a primordial man who was righteous. So, too, in the Vedas, people were made by the dismemberment of Purusha, the original human. While there are 33 gods, or devas, in the Rig Veda, an early strand of monotheism can also be found. This earliest Veda suggests that the gods only differ in name. They call it Indra, Mitra, Varuna, Agni, and he is the heavenly winged Garutman. To what is one, sages give many a title. They call it Agni, Yama, god of death, Matarisvan, one who flies in the sky. And again, you, Agni, are Indra, the shower of bounties on the good. You are adorable Vishnu, the hymned of many. You, Brahmaspati, Supreme Lord, are Brahma, the possessor of riches. You, the author of various conditions, are associated with wisdom. That's important spiritual evolution. One of the creation stories in the Vedas says that all created beings emerged from the Hiranyagarbha, literally a golden womb, which, strangely, is considered a male. In the beginning rose Hiranyagarbha, born only Lord of all created beings. He fixed and holdeth up this earth and heaven, What God shall we adore with our oblation? Giver of vital breath, of power and vigor, he whose commandments all the gods acknowledge, the Lord of death, whose shade is life immortal, what God shall we adore with our oblation? Who by his grandeur hath become sole ruler of all the moving world that breathes and slumbers, he who is Lord of men and Lord of cattle, what God shall we adore with our oblation? Book 10, chapter 121 of the Rig Veda teaches us that this golden embryo was, however, itself born from the supreme God, the Prajapati. Prajapati simply means Lord of creation. Prajapati is not a personalized deity like Indra, Varuna, Mitra, and the rest. It is, in other words, simply the one invisible creative force. The answer to the question in the verse, then, is Prajapati, the primal creative force. That's whom we adore with our oblations. So, in early Hinduism, we've seen two examples of spiritual evolution. One, while God has many forms and names, there is only one God. And two, Lord of creatures, Prajapati, is the single invisible creative force which sustains and rules all. One of the main tasks of religion is to define proper behavior. In early Hinduism, behavior needed to conform with celestial order, rita, and specific guidance was given. Here are some quotes from the Vedas. May I regard all beings with the eye of a friend. With the eye of a friend do we regard one another. Earn with 100 hands and donate with 1,000. I, God, abandon the person who eats before sharing his food with others, but I never forsake the person who gives food to the hungry before eating himself. I am the Lord of all food. I take away the food of him who eats without giving, and I nurture and give food in plenty to that person who considers giving food as important as feeding himself. And some more. Bring us the wealth that men require, a manly master of a house, free-handed with the liberal meed. Even him whom would not give, do thou, O glowing person, urge to give, and make the niggard soul grow soft. If I were lord of as much affluence as you are, Indra, then might I support your worshippers, dispenser of wealth, and not squander it upon wickedness. Whatever sin is found in me, whatever evil I have done, if I have lied or falsely sworn, waters remove this stain from me. If we have sinned against the man who loves us, have ever wronged a brother, friend, or comrade, the neighbor ever with us or a stranger, O Varuna, remove from us the trespass. By goodly paths lead us to riches, Agni, God who knowest every sacred duty. Remove the sin that makes us stray and wander. Most ample adoration will we bring thee. Forgive us, O Lord, if immersed in our affairs we have committed sin against divine powers. Forgive us for our sin against men, sin against elders, and sin against our conscience, and all sins that we committed knowingly, and those which might have committed unawares. Do not these verses resonate with other religions? Depending on when these passages were dated, they represent some of the earliest scriptures prescribing godly behavior. As you've seen from the structure of the Vedas, much of the content of the Vedas, certainly the Brahmanas and the Aryankas, concerns Vedic ritual. early Vedic religion was clearly dominated by priests and heavily focused on ritual. As you'll see, this would eventually prove insufficient, and a new category would need to be added to the Vedas, the Upanishads, the subject of a later chapter. Our next chapter, however, takes us to the plains east of the Caspian Sea so that we can examine the birth of Zoroastrianism.